I now resume my function as President of the Council, and I now give the floor to the representative of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. President, distinguished members of the Security Council, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the government and people of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, I would like to thank the United States and Panama for convening and organizing this urgent briefing. And I would also like to thank the Secretary General, His Excellency Antonio Guterres, for his constant commitment to my country's cause. In particular, I would like to thank ASG POBI for this morning's briefing. President, the east of the Democratic Republic of the Congo has suffered from war for far too long. Since 2021, the aggression of the RDF M23 coalition plunged our provinces into a humanitarian catastrophe, with some 7 million people being displaced. The apex was reached in January and February of this year, when the towns of Goma and Bukavu were invaded by the Rwandan Defense Forces and the terrorists from the AFC M23. Through its Resolution 2773, which was unanimously adopted on the 21st of February 2025, your Council demanded the immediate withdrawal of the M23 and the RDF and an end to all Rwandan support. Nevertheless, these resolutions have been completely ignored thus far. As we wait for the provisions of this resolution to be seen and implemented, we nevertheless welcome the leadership of the United States of America, who laid the groundwork for dialogue, which led on the 27th of June this year to the conclusion of a peace agreement between the DRC and Rwanda. This agreement sets forth the disengagement, disarmament, and conditional integration of non-state armed groups within the Congolese Armed Forces and the Congolese National Police. It also sets forth a security coordination joint mechanism and a provision on the respect for territorial integrity and an end to the hostilities. In the same spirit, the Democratic Republic of the Congo and the AFC M23 also signed in Doha, Qatar, a declaration of principles in the form of a preliminary agreement under which the parties committed to work together to find a peaceful solution to the conflict. The document sets forth the foundations and fundamental values that will guide the parties' efforts within the context of the peace process. It aims to establish a framework for future negotiations and to define common goals to achieve for peace and stability in the region. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the State of Qatar for their devotion and their commitment to achieve peace in the DRC and in the wider Great Lakes region. President, in spite of all of these initiatives to achieve peace, we remain concerned, in the light of recent developments, concerned by the sincerity of Rwanda's commitment and their proxies in the AFC M23, who are determined to breach their commitments under the Washington Agreement and the Doha Declaration of Principles. And I would like to give you some examples of this. Firstly, in July of this year, more than 300 Congolese civilians were killed in several different localities of the territory of Rutshuru in North Kivu, in the wake of attacks carried out by the AFC M23 coalition, which flagrantly violates the ceasefire which was reaffirmed in the Washington Peace Agreement from the 27th of June, and also the Doha Declaration of the 19th of July. Secondly, the information that has been gathered by the competent authorities which have also been corroborated by the OHCHR, set out that most of the victims, including many women and children, were defenseless civilians who were summarily executed. Just between the 2nd of July and the 2nd of August, these abuses also saw serious violations, including some 125 cases of sexual violence, hundreds of forced recruitments, including of children, more than 300 acts of torture, looting and arson, as well as the transfer of people into areas controlled by the AFC M23. Thirdly, the latest report of the UN group of experts on the DRC highlights the undeniable structural link between the M23 and Rwanda. It is clearly established there that Rwanda actively supports, militarily, logistically, and operationally, this armed movement. And this directly fuels the continuation of killings. It leads to widespread displacement of people, and it only worsens the persistent destabilization of the east of the DRC. This is a fact that was only further confirmed this morning in Ms. Pobe's briefing. President, these crimes have a clear ethnic dimension. Civilians, notably Hutus, have been targeted based solely on their ethnic background. It is therefore a deliberate attempt to use violence to change the Congolese social fabric. Given this evidence, the DRC asks this Council immediately to strengthen the sanctions regime, including the commanders of the AFC M23 and those responsible in Rwanda as well. Also to condemn the transfer by the AFC M23 of people into Congolese territory. By thus defending its own resolution 2773, the Council will be protecting civilians. It will re-establish the credibility of the peace process, and it will finally ensure accountability. This Council's recent history is full of examples where targeted sanctions were decided against parties who had been engaged in peace processes when they sabotaged the processes through massacres and widespread abuses. This Council has already shown that sanctions do not undermine peace. On the contrary, they are necessary to make peace possible. There's no reason why the case of the DRC should be any exception to this. By refusing to impose such measures against the M23 and their supporters in Rwanda, the Council would be in danger of endorsing impunity. It would be undermining its own resolution 2773, and it would only be eroding its own credibility and legitimacy. No peace process can survive impunity. Protecting human life is non-negotiable. Standing idly by as these crimes unfold would be a form of complicity. Protecting human life, including all communities, is non-negotiable, and it remains at the heart of any government's mission. The Security Council cannot stand by as impunity takes root. Justice and rigorous sanctions are necessary preconditions and not incidental conditions in order for the conflict to be solved in a lasting and balanced manner. For the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the priority remains to bring about lasting peace, and not a fictitious, ephemeral peace, as has been the case for some 3 decades. I therefore call on the Council, the main body of the UN responsible for upholding international peace and security, to ensure the full implementation of the provisions of its resolution 2773 of the 21st of February 2025. In this context, the guarantors of the Washington Agreement and the Doha Declaration should be encouraged to become more involved to put a definitive end to this senseless war, which is causing unspeakable suffering from the people of the DRC living in the areas controlled by the AFC M23. In this context, the government calls strongly on the Security Council to shoulder its responsibilities fully by mobilizing without further delay all necessary means for the effective implementation of the International Commission of Inquiry set out by Human Rights Council Resolution 37/1, which was adopted on the 7th of February 2025 during the 37th special session of the UN Human Rights Council. It's critical for this commission to shed light on all crimes committed within this crime of aggression, to identify the perpetrators unambiguously, including backers and accomplices, and to ensure that they are all brought to justice. It should also recommend measures to achieve accountability, including by sending information to the Council's sanctions committees to ensure that the conclusions lead to binding decisions and contribute to preventing that any kind of killings can be repeated, and this includes killings based on ethnic grounds. Thank you. I thank the representative of the Democratic Republic of the Congo for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Rwanda.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to start by thanking you for convening this meeting, and I thank the Assistant Secretary General for her presentation, and I thank you all, distinguished delegates, for your statements. Rwanda reiterates its full support to the ongoing peace efforts, especially the Washington and the Doha tracks. Achieving durable peace requires commitment and constructive engagement from all parties. We thank the government of the United States of America, the government of Qatar, and the regional leaders for their tremendous efforts in this regard. In a tangible demonstration of political will, the Rwandan Parliament unanimously ratified the Washington Peace Agreement on the 29th of July, 2025. Together, the Washington and Doha processes, alongside the AU-coordinated EAC SADC framework, offer a unique opportunity to address the root causes of the crisis in a result-oriented manner once and for all. The conflict in the DRC directly impacts Rwanda both in security and humanitarian terms. Waves of violence and discrimination have pushed more than 100,000 refugees into Rwanda. Unfortunately, these are not spoken about as they should be. For 3 decades, Rwanda has defended our people against attacks by the Kinshasa-backed FDLR and their affiliates. It is therefore in Rwanda's vital interest to see the DRC peaceful and well-governed, the root causes of the conflict resolved, with the durable peace and prosperity achieved. This is why the Washington and the Doha processes are critical. This is also why Rwanda calls on the Council to lend its full support to these efforts and hold all parties equally accountable. Mr. President, today's session is taking place amid grave and utterly unfounded allegations against my country. Rwanda is ready to cooperate with any credible and independent investigation, as we have done in the past, including with the recent facilitation given to the Human Rights Council's fact-finding mission in the region. On the alleged massacre of civilians in Rutshuru, the initial reporting of facts has been contradictory, vague, and in many respects outright implausible. Only an impartial and independent investigation can provide the Council with a reliable set of facts to consider. And this is not undermining the channels of reporting by the UN entities. It is actually to defend the credibility of these entities. Rwanda cautions the Council against the risk of misinformation and disinformation, including by actors who are expected to uphold the highest professional standards. We are particularly concerned by the long-standing pattern of selective reporting of human rights matters in DRC, where victims are painted as perpetrators and vice versa. While there has been overwhelming focus on alleged violations by AFC M23, the United Nations Joint Human Rights Office and other actors have consistently neglected the documented and undisputed atrocities committed against civilians in Minembwe in South Kivu, Nhuro in Masisi, and in Ituri, including drone strikes in civilian areas in violation of international humanitarian law. Arbitrary arrests and mass detentions based on ethnicity, public humiliation, targeting specific communities, and the propagation of dehumanizing speech in schools and places of worship. Distinguished representatives, listening to the statements by some of the delegations in this room, I realized that this organized pattern of disinformation has far-reaching implications than we had even thought. There is now reference in the Security Council room to the ethnicity of the alleged victims. The report says the information was given by phone and satellite. Was the verification of ethnicity also established by phone and satellite? The Council is falling in the trap of the ideology of further ethnicizing the situation in the Eastern DRC. Calling for investigation is not too much to ask. Just investigate. Or do the minimum, ask those who did the initial report to do a little more. There is a delegation that said, rightly so, that human beings are not statistics. The way it is being treated, if you end here, then you are treating them as a mere statistics. There is no information before the Council of who are those victims that we are talking about. How did you establish their ethnicity? Those are basic questions that the Council must ask. It is no accident that these campaigns emerge at politically sensitive moments such as now, when parties are preparing to return to negotiations in Doha and are beginning implementation of the Washington Peace Agreement, including the neutralization of the DRC-backed FDLR. This group remains the principal driver of conflict, violence, and human rights abuses in Eastern DRC. Selectivity undermines the credibility of UN reports and the pursuit of genuine accountability. This issue has been officially raised by Rwanda at this Council and with the Secretary General on multiple times. Rwanda is deeply concerned about the repeated ceasefire violations by DRC forces in recent weeks, including by Wazalendo and DRC-backed FDLR, units operating at the DRC government's direction, as well as credible reports of new military buildups in Uvira and the other areas. And what this means in terms of DRC's good faith commitment to the peace process. Additionally, DRC and certain countries with historical interests have downplayed or obscured the existence and the dangerous activities of their DRC-backed FDLR. Rwanda-backed AFC M23, in quotes, has been used here extensively. I did not hear a single delegation talk about Kinshasa-backed FDLR. Is it for lack of evidence that this group is backed by FDLR, by the Kinshasa government? I know you have a working methodology in the Council where you adopt a language, but is there no objective criteria to adopt a language? Do you lack evidence, even within your own reports, that Kinshasa government backs FDLR. Why don't you want to present it for what it is? Let me remind you who FDLR is. They are the people that are remnants of the people that were killing 10,000 people every day in 1994 when you passed the resolution 1912 to withdraw UN forces from Rwanda. They continued to kill 10,000 people on average every day when you passed the resolution 929 to provide safe passage to them when they were fleeing to DRC. Those are the same people that continued to pursue their intent. Forget about their military capabilities. The intent. In the spirit of the 1948 Convention is something that must concern the Security Council. The question of FDLR in statements is treated as a mere afterthought. That is not right. It is central to the problem we have in the DRC, and it must be treated as such. We are also disappointed that the DRC did not agree to launch the concept of operations for neutralizing Kinshasa-backed FDLR at the first meeting of the Joint Security Coordination Mechanism on August 7th, but we remain hopeful that this will be rectified in the next meeting. I wanted to commit, on behalf of my government, that Rwanda will not be found wanting in terms of what we have to do to meet our commitments under Washington Agreement and whatever we have to do to ensure lasting peace in our region, in the Eastern DRC. So before I conclude, just one statement of a general nature. Yes, it is non-negotiable, the territorial integrity of the DRC. So is the territorial integrity of neighbors of DRC, including Rwanda. And the territorial integrity and sovereign obligations of any member country of the UN include fair treatment of citizens. Sovereignty comes along with obligations. The DRC must stop mistreating or treating part of their population as less than citizens. And the Council must take up your obligation to defend that central tenet of the United Nations. All people must be equally protected. The Council must take a posture where every victim and every potential victim is able to catch your eye. I thank you.